really interesting fight, and this one on short notice for one of our fighters, but really both of our fighters. We have Chata Tuska, Brok Weaver, now taking on, rather than Frank Camacho, the Tarantula, Jalin Turner. And Matt, it's a very interesting fight because Brok Weaver, Frank Camacho, there was potential for fight of the night. I mean, both guys, Brok Weaver lost his last one, but the fight before that against Kazula Vargas, he was losing it until he got the disqualification win. So there's that, and he hasn't looked as good as he did on the regional scene so far with the UFC. And Frank Camacho was kind of, spinning his wheels to a point, 2-5 in his last 7. Both guys really needed a win. Both guys we really expected an impressive performance out of. Now, on the right-hand side here, Jalin Turner, he was supposed to be taking on Thiago Moises last weekend. Totally different fighter than Brok Weaver. I mean, Thiago Moises, you know what you're going to get in terms of the grappling and the pure jiu-jitsu. And listen, to let the cat out of the bag, but if you miss that prediction, we both had Moises to beat Turner. But this fight's totally different. So you have Jalin Turner coming in here as one of the longest fighters in lightweight, reminiscent of a James Vick, of a teammate in Roosevelt Roberts. And that's where this gets very interesting because Brok Weaver, his last fight was Roosevelt Roberts. He lost in the second round by submission. He just didn't look like he meant to be in there. I mean, he looked like a fish out of water in that fight. So insert Jalin Turner. You're going to have that added bonus of Roosevelt Roberts on this card taking on Matt Frevola. So you're probably already in town. You stuck around anyway. Maybe he was going to corner him. But Jalin Turner in here. Now, you might look at that record and say 9-5. Well, that's a bit of a salty record compared to Brok Weaver. He has 6 more pro wins. Jalin Turner is one of those guys that's been training out of a couple of really world-class gyms in Southern California, getting ready for an opportunity like this, working the hands over at Ruka Sport with Jason Perillo. Great. But again, I had mentioned the connection with Roosevelt Roberts, outside opportunity. And then again, Brok Weaver. What do you expect out of this guy? I mean, normally you expect pretty crisp boxing. I know he had that foray into bare knuckle that I always like to bring up. But it's more volume over power with him.
It is, and this is a really difficult matchup for him stylistically, much more so than the Frank Camacho fight, because Frank Camacho is at least going to play that game with Brok Weaver. He's going to go out there, he's going to just kind of go for broke. We'll see who gets knocked out. But with Jalin Turner, such a long fighter that when Weaver tries to get in close and sort of use his brawling style, Turner's going to be able to keep such a distance on him that a lot of Weaver's shots and hooks aren't really going to land. Now, the key in this fight for Weaver is you've got to get Jalin Turner up against the cage. If he can't use his length, it's not an advantage for him, and that's really got to be what you do, because Turner, he's not really going to get tired. He's got decent striking, but we see him leave himself open for shots. Now again, he got knocked out by Vicente Luque. There's no shame in that whatsoever. A top guy, 170. So Turner, as long as the weight cut's good, I really don't see many areas of the fight where he doesn't do better than Brok Weaver.
Now, I have to say, not too many details have emerged out of this one. We have the weights as 155 pounds. On the UFC site, it's listed as a catch weight, so maybe it's at 160.
Could be.
I don't know, so I'll throw that out there to you. Maybe you're on Saturday watching this and you know, and I don't yet. But I'm really looking forward to this one. And normally when you've got a guy like Brok Weaver fighting such a long fighter in Jalin Turner, it's one of those instances where the first thing you'd say, kind of like a guy that's fighting Neil Magny, that's not really the best example, but take the fight to the ground. I mean, take him completely out of it, get him down. But Jalin Turner, quite adept on the ground. And that's the thing. I mean, very well-rounded, long, rangy, uses strikes quite well. Also has some good pop on a shot. And I would definitely favor Jalin Turner if this fight takes it down to the mat. Again, Brok Weaver, good boxing, technical, throws volume, but it hasn't really come together in the UFC. He has the win, but how much stock do you put into that? So we look over at the votes on Tapology to 392 votes, 84% going Turner, 69% going with him by knockout. If you look over at the odds, Jalin Turner minus 325 favorite, Brok Weaver sitting at a plus 250. There's been a 100-point shift since open, but only Bovada has odds on this one so far. So I would expect them to stay around the same. And Jalin Turner actually one of the more confident picks of the week, coming in on pretty short notice here for me.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to disagree, just because when you look at any stage the fight can take place at, Jalin Turner's probably going to have the advantage. And especially Brok Weaver, the grappling we've seen hasn't been great in the UFC so far. So if Jalin Turner can somehow get on top during this fight, I think that'll be the most dominant position for either guy to be able to get into. So yeah, Jalin Turner, 100%.
Matt, it's a really interesting fight. Maybe Brok Weaver's made some changes. Maybe the short notice he goes in there, Fists of Fury, and gets a knockout win. But we're both going with Jalin Turner in this one. Really looking forward to the card. You're not going to want to miss the added bonus of Alexander Romanov taking on Rocky Martinez. So keep it locked in for that. And as we always say, Matt, Fight Night picks. Let's get into it.